Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we deliver the crucial knowledge you need without making you wade through endless textbooks. Today, we're taking a shortcut right into the heart of commercial law, agency law. This is basically the legal framework that decides when one person, an agent, can legally act on behalf of another, the principal. If you're in business, manage people, or even just sign contracts, this isn't optional. It's the foundation under every single handshake.
It really is. It's the invisible structure that makes business trust possible. And for this deep dive, we're going to drill down into three really critical questions that the source material brings up. First, how are these relationships actually formed, especially in some, surprising ways?
Yeah.
Second, what power does the agent really have? And third, and this is the big one, who's liable when things go right or wrong?
Right. And our mission here is to get past the simple definitions and focus on those aha moments, the things that create real-world risk. We're talking about the nuances that can, frankly, cost companies millions.
Exactly. So let's unpack this.
Okay, so let's start with formation. I mean, a lot of agencies are simple, right? You sign a contract, it says you can do X, Y, and Z. That's express agency. But the sources point to two other ways the law can create an agency, even when no one intended it.
And that's where the risk is. The first one is agency by necessity. This is a really incredible legal idea that basically arises out of an emergency.
Necessity. So that implies some kind of urgency. How does an emergency create legal authority?
It creates a sort of temporary implied agency, but only for preservation. So if a genuine emergency happens and it is absolutely impossible to get in touch with the principal, the law says someone has to be able to step in to protect the principal's property or interests. The assumption is the principal would have given that authority if they could have been reached.
Okay, so like that scenario we saw in the research with the perishable goods, if I'm transporting your cargo of, say, fruit, and the cooling system breaks down in the middle of the ocean, no satellite contact. I can basically hire someone to do emergency repairs to save your fruit, even if my contract says nothing about that.
Precisely. But, and this is a huge but, the law is extremely strict on this. You have to prove two things. One, a genuine, unavoidable emergency, and two, that contacting the principal was literally impossible. If you had cell service and just didn't want to bother with the call, well, that's not an agency of necessity. You just acted without authority. It's an exception, not a loophole.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, the second one. This one, for me, feels like the most dangerous for businesses. Agency by estoppel, or apparent agency. This is where what looks real becomes legally real.
It's a classic example of equity in law. Agency by estoppel doesn't care about the principal's internal intentions. It happens because the principal's own actions or words or even their inaction led a third party like a client to reasonably believe an agency existed.
Wait, okay, so let's get specific. You're saying if I fire a salesperson, but I forget to say disable their company email, and they use that old email signature to send one last fraudulent contract to a client they've worked with for years, my company could be on the hook for that.
Potentially, yes. Yeah, absolutely. The law says the principal is estopped. They are stopped from denying the agency because their own conduct created that perception. And think about the common risks: failing to get a company credit card back, not updating your website, letting an ex-employee keep their security pass. All of those things are signals to the outside world that the authority is still there.
Wow. That is a massive hidden liability. It means firing someone isn't just about the internal paperwork. It's not over until you've erased the appearance of their authority everywhere. The signals we send are key.
Absolutely. And those signals, they define the next critical concept we have to talk about: power. So now that we know how these relationships can just appear, the next question is, how far does that power actually go?
Okay, so we're moving from how it's formed to its scope. Let's start with the one everyone thinks of first: actual authority.
Actual authority is pretty straightforward. It's the power the agent truly has, the power the principal gave them, and it comes in two flavors: express and implied. Express is easy. It's written down. You can sign contracts up to $50,000. Simple.
An implied actual authority is just what's necessary to do the job.
Correct. It's the power that's reasonably required to carry out those express duties. If I tell you you're the general manager of my factory, that's express authority. You then have the implied authority to order cleaning supplies or hire someone for an emergency repair. You don't need to call me to get approval for paper towels. Those actions are just part of the job I gave you.
Okay, so actual authority is all about the internal agreement between the principal and the agent. But that brings us right back to those external appearances. And that's where ostensible authority, or apparent authority, becomes a whole different ballgame.
And what's fascinating here is that ostensible authority is the power the agent appears to have to a third party, and it's often because of the principal's own past actions. Even if the agent is acting completely against their actual authority, this is where that idea of agency by estoppel, which is about formation, directly shuts into ostensible authority, which is about scope.
Okay, let's use an example to lock this in. Let's say we have Jane, a regional manager. Internally, her company, the principal, sends her an email. Explicitly says you can no longer offer the 15% promotional discount, effective immediately. So her actual authority for that discount is gone.
It's exactly gone.
Yeah.
But Jane ignores the memo. She goes to a longtime client, let's call them Acme Corp, who has gotten that 15% discount from her every quarter for 4 years. And she offers it again on a huge $200,000 order. The company never told Acme Corp the policy changed.
So because the principal let Jane set up that pattern of behavior for years, they created the appearance of authority. Acme Corp, the third party, is just reasonably relying on that appearance. So the principal is bound to honor that 15% discount, even though Jane broke the rules.
That's the critical insight, yes.
Yeah.
The principal is bound. This law exists to protect third parties who are just, acting in good faith. If a company could secretly change an agent's powers and then just deny contracts later, commerce would grind to a halt. The system prioritizes trust.
I see why it's necessary, even if it feels harsh for the principal. It basically forces them to be proactive about managing how their representatives appear to the outside world.
It's a huge lesson in risk management, which brings us to the consequences. So a deal has been struck either with actual power or apparent power. The legal consequences have to fall somewhere.
Right. So what does this all mean for liability? Let's start with the principal. Who's on the hook?
Well, as we've said, the principal is liable for contracts made by the agent acting within their actual authority. That's the easy part. But more importantly, the principal is also bound by contracts made under the agent's ostensible authority.
So even if Jane, our manager, had a $50,000 spending limit in her contract, but the company had let her sign a $75,000 deal last year without saying anything, they're probably stuck with the next $75,000 contract she signs.
That's very likely, yes. The principal's liability is broad. And it's broad because they are the one benefiting from the relationship, and they're the one in the best position to control the appearances.
Okay, now let's flip it. What about the agent, Jane, in our example? Does she just walk away clean?
Usually, yes. If the agent acts within their authority and they disclose who the principal is, they effectively drop out of the picture. The contract is between the principal and the third party. But there are some really important exceptions where the agent becomes personally liable.
Okay, this is key. Where does the agent shoulder the risk?
So the first major one is when they breach their warranty of authority. The agent is essentially guaranteeing to the third party that they have the power they claim to have.
So if I walk into a business, claim I represent some giant corporation, and sign a huge deal, but I have no connection to them at all, I've breached my warranty of authority.
Absolutely. You misrepresented your power. The corporation isn't bound, obviously, but the third party took a loss because they trusted you. In that case, you are personally liable for the damages your misrepresentation caused.
Got it. That makes total sense. And the second path to liability was the undisclosed principal.
Right. If the agent makes a contract but doesn't say who they're working for, so the third party thinks they're just dealing with the agent directly, then the agent is personally on the hook, at least until the principal is revealed and decides to step in. It protects the third party by making sure someone is clearly responsible.
So that's the agent's liability to the outside world. What about their liability back to their boss? To the principal?
That's a completely separate issue. That's governed by the agent's duties, like obedience and care. If the agent exceeds their actual authority, like Jane offering that 15% discount against direct orders, she is liable to her principal for a breach of duty.
Oh, okay. So in our example, the principal is stuck honoring the discount for Acme Corp because of ostensible authority. But the principal can then turn around and sue Jane, their own agent, for the money they lost on that discount because she breached her actual authority.
Precisely. The liability structure is twofold. The principal takes the external hit to protect the market, and the agent takes the internal hit for breaking the rules. It's a really elegant system designed to keep business moving while making sure someone is ultimately accountable.
This has been a fantastic breakdown. We've really pulled out the most critical things you need to know about agency law.
Yeah, we've seen that agency can be formed by necessity or by that high-risk idea of estoppel. We clarified the agent's power, showing that what appears to be true ostensible authority can often beat internal reality.
And we wrapped up by seeing who holds the risk. The principal is broadly liable to protect outsiders, while the agent gets hit with personal liability when they misrepresent their power or disobey orders.
At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway has to be that in the eyes of the law, appearance trumps internal reality.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you. We talked about how easily ostensible authority is created, a business card, an email signature, a job title. So if you have to end an agency relationship with a key employee, what is the specific operational checklist you need to run through, beyond just the legal papers, to make sure you have revoked the appearance of their authority to everyone to prevent that massive future liability?
The legal risk doesn't stop when the agent walks out the door. It stops when you've shut down the last signal of their power. It's an administrative task with enormous legal weight.
Something to think about the next time someone leaves the firm. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this gives you the foundation you need to navigate these concepts with confidence.
Until next time.